Hi, everyone. This is Tim McGuinness with Silver Event Professionals. I'm glad you're here to join us for this series of interviews that we have with leaders in the event industry. These sessions are meant to be fun, informative, and brief. So let's get right to it. I am very happy to welcome David Saef, Senior Vice President of Strategy for Freeman. David, welcome. Glad you're here and you look great.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, David, so you're with Freeman Decorating, and I know everybody knows who Freeman Decorating is, and the largest or one of the largest general service contractors in the business. And a lot of people know Freeman as the organization that provides labor and products and services, registration counters and carpet for the shows and things like that. But,
Right.
really, Freeman has become really a holistic, more inclusive organization of a lot of different services. Can you give us a 30 to 45-second, overview? I know that's a short
Sure.
period, but we'll talk
No, no,
about
no.
Freeman later on. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. So you're right. We started decorating almost 100 years ago. We're going to celebrate our 100th anniversary in 2027. We've always been focused on connecting people in meaningful ways. But in the last, well, I mean, it's gone back 2 decades, but probably in the last 10 or 15 years, we really accelerated and expanded. And we think about it as a holistic series of companies and capabilities to help event organizers from soup to nuts, from really thinking about who they could target and how they could attract audiences, which is what MBG, our marketing agency, does, all the way through to planning and producing an event. And most people know us for trade shows and conferences, which is Freeman, and people know its legacy is Freeman Decorating, now it's Freeman, and then our audiovisual, but getting way beyond that. So if you think about the NHL Winter Hockey Classic, you think about the Field of Dreams out in Iowa, the baseball game that was played a couple of years ago, that was BAM. And BAM partners with Major League Baseball, the NHL, the NFL. We produce lots. We did a temporary concert venue in Toronto a couple of months ago to produce a Coldplay concert, not the one that everybody knows, but we produced the Coldplay concert up in Toronto. And we also expanded into exhibits. We acquired Sparks and 3D. Both 3D is producing classic exhibits, and Sparks produces events and activations in addition to exhibits. So we support a variety of companies, from Microsoft to Google to to Amazon Web Services. We are producing more events for more companies in addition to the legacy and the strong foundation we have in exhibitions and conferences. So it's a full suite. By the way, the other one, which is in your neck of the woods, Tim, is the oh, now it's escaping me. It was in Javits, the Fan Fest.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we produced that, and that was hundreds of thousands, or almost 100 more. Well, not 100,000. Sorry, it was 100,000 people this year. We just had
Yeah.
the owner of that Fan Fest in Javits, and it's producing those really exciting experiences and fan activations across
And
a
we're going to
wide
talk
variety.
about this a little bit later on because you went over
Totally,
your 45 seconds there that I
I
gave you.
did, I
So,
did.
all
There's
right.
so much to share. Go ahead.
That's all right. Hey, listen, David, I always like to get to know the people that I have these conversations with a little bit deeper, right? So,
Yeah,
and you gave me a little bit of a background as who David Safe is, but I have some additional questions that I want to ask David Safe here. You ready for it,
right
David?
ahead.
All right.
Sure.
David, I know you're a skier, right?
Yeah.
And I know you've got some fabulous mountains out in the Chicagoland area where you live there. All kidding aside, what's your favorite mountain to ski?
Alta. Alta's
Oh,
just on the edge of Salt Lake City. I spent in the last couple of years more time in Utah. Alta gets more snowfall than any other place in the United States. It's got a microclimate right next to Snowbird. And it is, by the way, skiers only. It's a paradise.
good,
So,
good. First concert you went to?
first concert, technically Livingston Taylor, brother to James Taylor,
Oh,
in a venue outside of Boston. But I'd say like my first big concert, it was Boston Worcester Centrum, which is just outside of. It was the band Boston at the Worcester Centrum. They played I don't know, probably 8 or 9 days in a row. We went to 3 of those days, and I lost my voice, and it was great.
Hey, do you have any superstitions?
I don't really, I don't think about it. I do, I, I, I'm careful with my life, but I don't have anything that takes me and gets me distracted with superstitions.
Okay, all right. Listen, you probably may not be a big fan of this, but I'm going to ask because people always have these desires once in a while, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What's your favorite fast food restaurant?
Well, it has to be McDonald's. And I used to go to McDonald's growing up; was always a treat. And then, so one of my, you talked about backgrounds. So I used to, way back in 1990, I was one of the first Americans to spend a lot of time in Moscow and
Okay.
studying there when I was a student. When I was, I moved to, I spent a semester in Moscow, and in January of 1990, McDonald's opened their first restaurant. They've since left Russia, and
Right.
I have also left Russia. But at the time, it was a restaurant with 54 cash registers, and you had to wait 3 hours to get a Big Mac. And
Wow.
so we would stand in line around Pushkin Square for 3 hours. Once you got in, by the way, you could get it, get your meal, and you could go back to the last four registers and get more food. And I was living there as a student, and I would buy. This is going to sound gross, but I would buy Big Macs and French fries for 2 weeks because the dorm food is terrible. But it's McDonald's, and even for that experience, it's still McDonald's because it's just everybody grows up on something. For
Hey,
me,
it's the all American meal, right?
that's it. That's
You
all it
know.
was. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I know you're a history guy. Any favorite historical figures?
Well, Abraham Lincoln for sure.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, it's been interesting. I didn't when I was a sophomore in high school, I didn't learn U.S. history. My teacher at the time told us that the kids would teach themselves sophomore year. I didn't learn much.
Okay.
So it was
All
in
right.
my 50s I started reading U.S. history. But I'd say obviously George Washington for founding the country, Andrew Jackson for shaking things up and changing the role of the executive, and then Abraham Lincoln. By the way, the other person that I have a lot of respect for, he ended up almost broke and in a series of scandals, but Ulysses S. Grant in
Yeah.
bringing the country together and winning the war for sure.
Yeah. 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 All good choices. Here's my last question for you.
Sure. Yeah.
Favorite book or last book read?
So I just recently, per my history reading, I've been reading U.S. history since I turned 50. One of the last books I've read, just an unusual book, but it's about the Transcontinental Railroad, the
Yeah. Okay.
building and the funding of the railroad. It's called I got it right here. Nothing Like It in the World by
Okay.
Stephen Ambrose. We had two teams, one on the East Coast, one of
Yep.
were starting in the East in Iowa, and one in the West, and competing against each other and getting paid per mile or per elevation. There was scandal with the railroad, but to take something and build it out of nothing and then completely convert the U.S. economy, it's a fascinating story. By the way, in Utah, the two teams crisscrossed each other, and then there
Yeah.
was a feeling of like, we got to end this somewhere. But it's a great book, a great read. It ties to just why the railroads are so critical, or were so critical to our economy. So I just think it's a great read, and post Civil War and pre Gilded Age, or it's a really fascinating book.
And the big part of that workforce were Chinese, correct?
Chinese on the West Coast for sure, notwithstanding some of the discrimination and even killings of the Chinese as well at
Right.
the time. So yeah,
Right.
it was a very, very tough, but they were incredibly industrious. We would not have the trains in Lake Tahoe and the building of that railroad without the industriousness and the cleverness and the planning and the commitment of the Chinese. And then we had many other immigrants building
Okay.
that railroad as well.
Hey, listen, I want to spend the next couple minutes talking about your career, really.
Sure.
Listen, I know you've got a BA in Russian studies, correct?
Correct.
And do you speak the language at all?
I speak it probably just enough to get through my taxi driver going to O'Hare and back. But at one point, I was fluent for sure.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So you go to school, you get a BA in Russian studies.
Yeah.
I know you got your MBA, but you graduate and you didn't jump right into the event business at that point. Kind of take us through what that next step was after, because my sense is Probably in the trade show business, there's not a lot of use for Russian studies. So, but kind of take us through it.
I spent 3.5 years working in private equity, looking at countries that most people avoided: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. Kazakhstan is actually a very rich country with oil and gas. Uzbekistan with gold. And I looked at, with the private equity firm, we looked at gold mining, looked at uranium mining actually at the time, and reviving, materials for the nuclear industry. And we looked at other businesses. That was for 3.5 years. Fascinating part of my life, going to far-flung areas. But you're right, far away from the normal business.
Right.
After business school, during and after business school, I went to a company called LEK Consulting. They're more like a McKinsey or Bain. And I worked in London for 3.5 years. So I stepped away after 3.5 years from my Russia days. And I spent 10 years from my first trip to Russia in 85 to my last trip to Russia was 95. But after my last project at LEK, so I spent 6 years there. My last project was with a second last project was a company called Exhibit Group Giltsburg, which is the old design build firm.
Yep.
And I was a consultant to them. And I, like everybody else, went into this project, spent 10 months, had no idea this industry was an industry. And I was looking at what is the lifeblood of the exhibits business? How do you build relationships with companies? And then really understanding how can we grow that exhibits business. And after 10 months, I was fascinated by it, talked to the leadership team, end of the project. And then I guess 9 or 10 months later, almost a year later, 10 months later, I got hired to be the head of the largest division of Exhibit Group Giltsburg in the design build. And I also, from that point,
So you were hooked at that point, right?
I was hooked. I have to say, it is a fascinating industry. And I think part of it was, there was a time, obviously, we want to feature new products.
Yeah.
It was all about building booths.
Yep.
But I'll never forget, in my early days, I took a video home with some of the big exhibits that Exhibit Group built. And I had a 4-year-old at home, and he looked at the TV screen. We had a VHS running, and he goes, "Daddy, where are all the people in the exhibits?" And that's why I realized it's all about creating that connection between people.
Yeah.
And so it got me hooked in working with clients. For sure.
Yeah. And then you went from Exhibit Group over to GES, I assume? That was the transition?
So Exhibit Group and GES were sister companies at Viad.
Right.
And they combined in 2010. And so I spent the first 7 years of my career really focused on the P&Gs, the Boeings, the major exhibitors, and producing booths for Caterpillar and others.
Corporate clients.
Corporate clients. 2010, we blended, and I took over strategy and marketing and then strategy planning and marketing with GES, but always had a team focus on strategy for clients, but spent all of my time, almost, well, 3/4 of my time started getting focused on associations and for-profit organizers. And so that's where I learned the expo business, went to ABC Kids Expo, floor to floor, from empty hall to empty hall. And from Larry Scher and the team and others that learned the expo business. And so that was fascinating. But yeah, that got me into the expo. And then, GES went into AV and registration and housing. So I learned those businesses as well.
And then you transition over to Freeman back in, was it 2018, 2017?
2018.
2018. So it's been 7, 8 years now, right?
It's been almost 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, listen, let's talk about you, kind of what your group does.
Yep.
We won't reveal any names as far as people that you're, dealing with at this point, but you've got a title of Senior Vice President of Strategy. What is, the key role that you and your group, perform for clients, whether that be association organizers or even corporate clients?
Yeah, no, we work with all three, mostly with the associations and the for-profits. We have 3 areas we focus on. One, research and insights. So we're the group that produced the Freeman Trends reports that the industry has really been fascinated by, and it's helped to really open up the perspectives of attendees, particularly millennials and Gen Z. So we now produce reports every quarter. And in addition to those Freeman Trends reports, we produce surveys, whether they're intercept surveys, post-show surveys. The hot thing we've been doing is community needs service, really rising above the show and understanding what is the community desiring? What do the next gen attendees, or that we call them now gens, what are they expecting from events? Is vastly different. So we do the research and insights. We do sponsorship strategy and sales, another hot area that has been growing. People are looking for different areas, different sources of revenue, and then pure strategy. So in pure strategy, it is combining the insights and thinking about the experience design, but also thinking about how are we going to grow this organization. So sometimes we do the organizational strategy, and oftentimes we do the event strategy, which is over the next 3 to 5 years, how am I going to grow this event? Where do new audiences come from? How do we evolve the programming and the engagement? Networking. We just produced a report on networking that got released last month. Hot topic now is how do I curate that interactivity and meeting new people? And part of it is millennials and Gen Z. They're the most delayed generations. They're looking for, when they go to events, they're looking for a return on their time. They want practical skills. They want new connections. So we help clients identify those needs and design longer term, more complex programs to transform events.
Hey, David, I have to ask you a question, right? So a lot of organizers, associations, right? They've got a way that they've been managing and producing their shows for years, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you've got a David Saef or a Freeman come in and give counsel, advice, as far as the way you think that things can be done better. And you look at flaws within the system as far as how to correct some of the things that they're doing maybe incorrectly. Do you find organizations that are receptive, most organizations receptive to some of the recommendations that you make, or do you find organizations that kind of push back and kind of take in your input and just kind of ignore it after, when all is said and done?
We've had great embrace with clients, great embrace. And I would say there's a couple things going on. One, post-acute COVID, people have permission to think differently.
Yeah.
We've seen the average number of events. People used to go to 4.1, dropped to 3.2 in the middle of COVID. Now it's 3.9. So we say to customers, if you're not number 1 or 2, those number 1 or 2 events, those have been our best clients. Now it's not to say we don't deal with other 3 to 4, number 3 or 4 type clients, but the market leaders are seeking to separate from the rest. And that's by accelerating their growth, their profitability, and their community resonance. And that's why we do those community needs surveys. But I'll say this, Tim, you don't have to be a big show to be a great client and to really transform what you're doing. We have a lot of shows, a lot of organizers that we work with, and associations, by the way. Some of our best work is with that small to medium-sized organization. They're trying to stand out. Probably the biggest thing that drives people is if you're wanting to get ahead where the millennials and Gen Zs are thinking, if you're wanting to get ahead and getting those exhibitors and sponsors to have strong ROI and strong value proposition, those visionaries, those are the people that we've worked with incredibly successfully. To your point, there are others who feel that status quo is acceptable, and some have done okay. But I'd say that the person that we thrive with is someone who's really looking to stand out organizationally and stand out in their performance of their organization. And that's where we get a lot of, one, we get a lot of traction. Two, we've had some clients, they've gone and been able to secure from their boards anywhere from a modest investment to a multi-million-dollar investment over a multi-year program. But again, you don't have to be big to be transformational. You just need to be thinking visionary. So
And what do you see? I guess looking to your crystal ball, right? You're a strategy guy, right? And you're always looking at things from a I want to call it a visionary standpoint.
Sure.
What do you see in the next 24, 36 months, or what are you excited about in the industry, and what do you see as potentially the challenges?
Despite some of the headlines and the concerns today, the U.S. is still the strongest market for growth. And we're going to continue to see that. By the way, international organizers, particularly for-profits, they are looking and they're really prioritizing the U.S. market for growth and opportunity. That means if you're an association sitting on a strong show or sitting on a medium strong show, I would say really invest in yourselves, because that's an opportunity for you to grow and not necessarily become a target. So I think the U.S. market will continue to be very strong for the next 24 months. Has there been some changes in academia? We've seen some. In some of the international participation, we've seen some, but not the kind of numbers that event planners are broadcasting. There's too much of people kind of panicking with headlines. The core fundamentals are strong. I would say this: the key to driving value is making sure that we think more about interactive and immersive experiences with subject matter experts, and that we're curating the personalized experiences and learning and networking of next gen or now gen attendees. That's where it is. So I think there's a lot of opportunities sitting in front of us. Networking, by the way, we've had some nice affairs, nice parties. People want something more meaningful, more curated. So I see there's huge opportunity in the US market. I would say going out 24 to 36 months, I see there's opportunity internationally. Now, there's no doubt in the Middle East, there's growth going on there.
Yep.
Yep. I think there's going to be more growth coming out of Europe and even out of Asia. But I think for the moment, it's a US market with a huge opportunity because people are looking at, and we look at manufacturing sector. So, notwithstanding some of the weakness in technology, people are still looking for new technological solutions. We've seen a bump in AI events. So we're really looking at those hot sectors and how you create better experiences with better ROI.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I want to be sensitive to your time and the time of the audience. So we have run over, and I think I mentioned that to you before we got on the phone or on the call here, that I assumed that we would go over. I could speak to you for much longer, but I do appreciate your time. You're a busy guy and you're a tough guy to nail down. So I really do appreciate your time, David.
Thank you.
And you're fabulous. Always fascinating to listen to as far as what's going on. And we'll talk to you soon.
Tim, thank you very much. Appreciate all the opportunity. It's been a great conversation.
Take care, David.